Welcome, my name is Andreas Patikis and I'm the founder of the Grey Cotswolds, where we offer unique courses and retreats around stress and well-being, anger management, parenting and sports performance for a healthier mind and body. Our venues are set in the beautiful and relaxing Cotswolds countryside with luxurious private dining and facilities. Our specialist team have vast knowledge and experience with beneficial therapies and advice, all in one place, to help with any challenges and empower you for life. Discover a new way of living through our podcasts and prepare to enter a world that is not black and white. Let us accept the colours in between. Welcome to the Grey Cotswolds. Hi everyone, and today I've got Eric with me and we're going to be talking about breaking the habit of dis-ease.
Indeed we are.
And I've said it in that way because there is a reason for that. So tell us who you are and what you do, Eric.
Okay, so I'm Eric Goodchild. I'm the founder and director of Cheltenham Holistic Health Centre, which is in Cheltenham. I've practiced acupuncture for the last 40 years. And during that time, I've really specialised in stress-related conditions. I do treat pain, of course, because people come in pain, so you have to treat them. But my main emphasis is on why people get ill and why they don't get better by themselves. Because one of the things you learn through training in acupuncture is that healing is a completely normal thing. The body is always trying to put itself right. And so is the mind. You know, people will naturally get over trauma, they'll naturally get over loss, all sorts of things in their lives, given time, unless they don't. So if they don't, the question always is, well, what's obstructing that healing process? You know, what's keeping them in a disease state? And what I've discovered through just practicing over this period of time and seeing different clients is that a lot of it is to do with deeply established habit. A lot of it can be very old habit, you know. So I mean, on a physical level, for example, if you've been very tall when you were a youth, when people tend to be rather self-conscious, and you've been teased by your friends for being tall, you might have stooped in your posture. Okay. And 30 years later, you might still be stooping. Even though that is no longer a useful strategy for you. At the time it made you feel better, it doesn't work anymore, and so you eventually end up with a lower back condition. And this is to do with this old habit that's basically never been addressed. Okay. So in the process of treating that, not only do you have to obviously treat the back condition, you also have to retrain in order to remove that old habit.
How do you do that?
Well, you can do it with postural training, but so you could use Alexander technique. You could do all sorts of things, but the main thing is to bring the awareness of it to the patient, so that they go, "Oh yeah."
So you're not putting a plaster on something. So they're coming with something. You're not just there to stick a needle and just put a plaster and say, "Okay, hopefully that solves that." You're digging deeper, aren't you?
Yeah, you're looking. You're really looking through your diagnosis at what it is that has prevented that person from getting better. You know, a lot of the time, you know, you won't find anything. A lot of the time, you know, if somebody's got a back problem, it's because they fell off a ladder. In which case, you know, you won't find an emotional or a physical or any other reason for them to. But generally, if that is the case, then when you treat them, they'll get better quite easily, because there isn't anything blocking it. You know. But also, you know, when we're looking at stress, for example, a lot of the habits to do with stress are built up through people's negative self-image. You know, they might have learned from their parents or from their, you know, for a very long time they might feel that they're, if they don't behave in a certain way, that they're a failure, or, you know, whatever it might be. And those beliefs, that perception and that belief, will also prevent them from getting better. So you have to change the perception and the belief. And so for actually all of us, we should examine our habits on a regular basis, really, to make sure that they're still current and we still need them. Because a lot of we are creatures of habit. A lot of our habits are perfectly fine. We have what we call, personal signature. The way I'm waving my arms about, for example, is the way I wave my arms about. It's part of my signature. It's not doing me any harm. The fact that I can recognise somebody down the street who I haven't seen for 15 years from behind because of the way they walk, that's their personal signature. And that signature is made up by habit. And it's fine. But some of the habits that we develop actually completely get in the way of our maintaining health, and so they become part of the disease structure. So when I say changing the habit of dis-ease, what I'm saying is that my focus as a practitioner is to point out those habits and to look at those habits. And you can change them with acupuncture. Acupuncture is a great tool for it. So say, for example, somebody comes along and says, I'm miserable and depressed because my wife's having an affair and my boss hates me and I've got £1 million overdraft. And then they lie on the couch. They all seem like good reasons to be miserable, of course. And you can choose a few well-chosen acupuncture points and you can actually see the patient relax and release on the couch. And then you can say to them, well, how do you feel now? And they say, I feel much better now. And you say, why? Has somebody paid your overdraft off? Has your wife stopped having an affair? Does your boss like you now? No, all of those things have stayed the same. What's changed is the lock that exists between their internal state, their internal well-being, and what's actually happening in the outside world. So that is very, very liberating. That is a way of changing the perception and the belief that people have that they have to respond in a certain way.
So it's changing the story they're telling themselves.
It is changing the story they're telling themselves, but it's also liberating people from believing that because they're used to it, because they're in the habit of responding in a particular way to external events, that this is the only way that they can respond. But if you can change that for them, and the reason why acupuncture is so great at it is because...
Well, I was going to say, how can that change so quickly in one session? They're lying there and then they feel like that, just on one session. What happens?
Well, acupuncture is rather... There's a passive element to acupuncture, which is that the acupuncture points remove blocks. They allow energy to move freely. When energy moves freely, people generally feel okay. They feel relaxed. Feeling tense and tight is a symptom of energy being stuck. So you're moving the energy. They may set it back up again. They may be fine for the rest of the day and then feel crap the next morning, for some reason or another, But the point is that the more you repeat that, the more likely they are to adopt a different habit, a better, more healthy habit. Yeah. But the reason why acupuncture is great for that is because it's not a drug. So if somebody had taken a drug, they'd say, well, I feel better because I've had a bottle of wine, or I feel better because I've taken some medication. But nothing has changed. But when you do it with acupuncture, you're not introducing anything. The person's the person, So that people have a different sort of reaction to it. They think, God, in fact, my first reaction to having acupuncture, the first time I did 45 years ago, was a real sort of revelationary feeling that I hadn't felt like this since I was a child. And I thought, God, how can that happen with one needle? And that's when I first became really fascinated by it. And since I've become, I'm still very excited, 40 years later, by how it changes people's lives, on a profound level, and I get a real buzz out of that.
And what would you say to people who are maybe sceptical about acupuncture and its effectiveness and benefits?
I can understand their scepticism. Basically they're coming from a place of ignorance, aren't they? I'd say to them, try it, or people sometimes say to me, "Oh well, I've heard about acupuncture. Obviously, can't work." And I go, well, "Where did you study it then?" I mean, they're just coming from a place of prejudice. We all have prejudices, and most of them are based on ignorance. So I'm used to it.
And I suppose it's not something that they're going to be referred to by GPs. We've grown up generation after generation. It's not the norm. You might get referred for CBT or any other treatment, a physio or something, because it's not maybe regularly as mainstream. And for whatever reason, I suppose then the narrative and the story they tell themselves again is maybe it's not there for a reason.
Well, most pain clinics have got acupuncture. They do refer to acupuncture. The problem about referral is that if it's a written referral, you're actually handing over the legal responsibility to the practitioner you're referring to. And because acupuncture is not a state-registered practice at the moment, if a doctor writes a referral to me, he's still legally responsible if I screw up. So they don't tend to do that. We were supposed to become state registered, but when the Conservative government came back in 2010, they went, "You look pretty well regulated to us, we can't be bothered," so they didn't do anything about it. So acupuncture, even though it is very well self-regulated, remains outside of state registration. And so official referrals are pretty rare.
Yeah.
But we do get, what tends to happen is that patients will say, "Oh, I was wondering whether I should try acupuncture," and the doctors go, "Good idea. Go and see so-and-so, or go and see so-and-so." So they're not against it at all. I mean, in fact, acupuncture is pretty well accepted now. I wouldn't call it alternative even. I think it is, pretty mainstream. And part of the reason is that whatever research has been done on acupuncture, it is proven to do what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
So it's always had very, very positive, research response, which is good.
So for people come in here to the Grey Cotswolds on the retreat, what can they expect from you when they're here regarding acupuncture?
Well, I'll certainly run through the basics of acupuncture. I'm not going to explain it fully because it would take years. But I will basically talk about what its benefits are. I'll talk about what my particular emphasis is with acupuncture. And I hope to be able to speak in a way which makes people reflective about their own lives, makes them recognise their own obstacles, their own prejudices, their own blocks to becoming the healthy person that they would like to be. And I think just through anecdote, through hopefully humour, I do like to tell jokes.
Oh, I've heard your stories. They're very good, Eric. Yeah.
I hope that people will go away realising that there's an abundance of other opportunities for them, which they haven't explored yet because they've not been offered. So, and
I think for me, and I think generally a lot of people who are not familiar with acupuncture so much, they may have tried acupuncture as well, but maybe understanding the mechanics of it and what actually happens and what you're actually doing. I know it's a broad subject, but maybe understanding it will be able to show them, rather than just it's someone who puts a pin in you and hopes for the best type of thing, which is not what happens. No. Just understanding the mechanics of it and what happens. I think that sense of a knowledge and awareness of that can also help as well.
Yeah, I mean, people often, one of the common questions I get is, well, how does acupuncture work? At which point I find myself going, oh God, do I tell them the whole story, or do I just tell them a brief story, which sounds glib? But why it works is quite simple. It works because it provokes change. And that is what all therapy does. All therapy has a diagnostic system which categorises and recognises where the person is. Through talking to your patients, you try to get as clear an idea as possible as to where they want to be, and you plot a route. And that route from where they are to where they want to be is a process of provoking change, step by step. So, it is a process. I mean, a lot of people need weeks and sometimes months. I have some patients who come back for maintenance treatment every 6 weeks or so, and have done for years and years, because they find that rebalancing of their energy just keeps them on a much happier level.
Like an MOT.
Yeah, regular MOT.
Regular MOT,
exactly.
As part of
so it is fundamentally a preventative. The origins of acupuncture were to keep you well, not to put you right when you're ill. So it's very much a preventative, and it's based on Taoism, ancient philosophy of China. It was first written down in the times of Lao Tzu and Confucius and so on, 3,000 years ago, but the practice of using needles or or piercing therapeutically probably goes back to shaman practices, could be 20,000 years.
Wow.
Where the witch doctors would have been engaged in battles with evil spirits, and they would use spears. They might not have broken the skin, they might have just poked. But if they've been doing that practice for 15,000 years, passing it on from father to son, they'd have got pretty good. I mean, they weren't stupid, these people. They'd have got pretty good at knowing where to poke for different types of conditions. And so it was the philosophers 3,000 years ago who went out into the field and looked at these practices and wrote it all down. And they were the ones that theorized about it and created the theories of yin yang and the 5 elements and all of these various other principles that are the sort of bedrock of acupuncture practice, and has remained the same ever since. Incredible, really.
It is. It is when you think about how long it's been, how long ago, and the journey it has, and it's still here today.
I know. And anyone who thinks that the Chinese would practice a system of medicine for 3,000 years if it didn't work.
Food for thought, that.
Yeah, and they're kidding themselves.
Well, we're coming to the end of time, but a couple of quick-fire questions I'd like to ask you before I let you go, like I do with everyone. What's your favourite way to relax?
Tennis and music.
Tennis and music, great. And what would you say to anyone, what advice would you give, what change could they make today for their stress and well-being? Don't worry. Short, sharp answers. You've got it all worked out, haven't you, Eric?
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today and joining us. It's been really
it's been a pleasure.
Interesting. And so this is Andreas on Life's Journey, and fellow traveller signing out. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any thoughts, feelings or reflections on today's podcast, please leave them on the comments section on our website or social media channels. You can find more episodes and information at www.thegreycotswolds.co.uk. This is Andreas Patikis, your fellow traveller on Life's Journey, signing off.